Okay, so go ahead and lift up the box. You have 4 minutes to dial that phone number.
That's it?
That's it? With that phone.
Wait, so you have to...
It's all the way from here.
Yeah. 7.
Oh no, zero's all the way over. How do I restart?
Did you...
Okay. Right here. Alright.
7. Then... Just fill it a little bit.
Maybe.
8.
That was 7.
Yeah, 7.
Another 0.
Or do you go all the way around back here? Wait.
Dude, that makes sense.
Wait. Yeah, we got it. Alright. Okay. All the way around. There you go. 8. 7. Another 0, all the way around. 3. Oh, baby. 8. So you don't stop at this. Oh, does the last one? Because look.
You just successfully dialed 0.
No. Stop. Okay. So.
Wait. So when we go like this, they said that was right. This was 0, then.
Wait.
Does the second
Look,
one?
watch out.
Does the second
Is
one
this correct?
0?
Bring it all the way around and then like. Bruh.
Think of different.
Wait a minute.
Think of different.
We have to pick up the phone and then do it?
Put the phone to your ear. What do you hear? What does it sound like? Okay, that's a start.
Alright, watch out.
Incorrect. Correct for a 0.
What does 0 sound like?
What does a 0 sound like? Like, I know that's not fair because, how would they know how to operate one of those phones? But it just shows you how things have changed, and we all know that. We've been talking about that the last couple weeks, and this morning we're going to wrap up this series, Screen Time, How to Redeem the Screen. And one thing I need to say is I appreciate when I get feedback. All right, I love when you come to me and say, Chris, because of whatever you said, I'm whatever. Like, I love that, but please understand, I am not the Facebook police, okay? I appreciate if you've made changes in Facebook, but you don't have to come and tell me all about them, all right? Like, I'm not like going to be some maniacal guy, because the fact of the matter is we all use this technology. But today we want to talk about redeeming the screen in terms of a screensaver. And what I want to do this morning is I want to kind of look at the really positive things that we can use our screens, our phones, whatever they might be, for. And as we're wrapping up this series, again, I'm just struck by how fast things can change, as that video shows just how foreign things as one time as common as a rotary phone seem to be today. So alien. I saw a picture recently, maybe you saw this as well, that kind of captures, I think, the shift in our culture. Look at that picture for a minute there, and I want you to find the one person in that picture that is unique, right? Like, which one of these is not like the other ones, all right? And I don't know if you can see it or not. Do you see it? All right, go ahead and show the next one. Right down there, yeah. Everybody else is on their phones, and look at the look on her face where she is enjoying whatever it is they're watching in the present moment. To me, that just kind of captures how we have shifted as a culture. Almost every one of us now looks at the world for a large majority of time through the lens, through a screen. And sometimes it can be an all-dominating force. It impacts us in ways that we really don't realize. And in some ways, honestly, we're just really now beginning to discover the long-term ramifications of how much time we spend on our screens, on our phones, on our devices. And so as a church, we want to just kind of put our guard up. We want to put up some boundaries. But we also want to see opportunities in it. And we want to recognize that there is incredible possibilities for good because of our technology. So again, the title for this message is Screensaver. How can we use our screens for good, to redeem or to save our screens? Because they're not going anywhere. They are a part of us. It's debated these days. If you make the statement like, we can't function without a smartphone today, you will have our arguments and disagreements. But I want to tell you, it is becoming increasingly clear to me that is, if it's not the case now, it is very soon. Lori and I, last fall, went to see a play in Chicago, Hamilton, which is a great play. I highly recommend it. But when I bought the tickets, they sent them to me on my phone. And literally through an iPhone app, that was the only tickets I had. And I looked on the website because I'm like, surely, I want to have paper backups, right? I want to have paper backups. And I even called the theater. Literally, the only tickets that you could have were on your phone. Now, that's great. I use tickets on my phone, plane tickets all the time. But what if I would have lost my phone? What if my phone would have gone dead? That to me just seemed a little bit over the top. You ask any college student and they'll tell you that they can hardly function as a college student without a smartphone, not because of social media and all that, but because that is just how the college communicates with them. And it's just so much a part of what they do and how they do it. And so we need to recognize that they're not going away, but we need to also, again, think about the ways that they are adversely affecting us. And so in Romans chapter 12, we've been in this and we've been kind of looking at what Paul has to say about conforming to the culture in a bad way. And he's just telling these first generation Christians in Rome, here's how you need to live out your faith. He says, you're in a very pagan city. Christianity is very new. People don't really understand who you are. They don't understand what the church is about. There's all these rumors floating around. So Paul says, let me give you some instructions about how you should live. And so specifically in Romans 12, how you should treat one another. He says, now you don't want to be conformed to the pattern of this world. You don't want to be just squeezed in the world's mold without even thinking about it, but you want to be transformed. He says in verses 1 and 2, and so he says, so you'll live the way that Jesus wants you to live. Well, then the rest of chapter 12, which we really haven't looked at a whole lot, we're going to look at today in verses 3 through 21. He kind of just gives a number of both positive and negative imperatives, just very, very simple, straightforward about how we ought to live, how we ought to love one another, how we don't treat people the way the world treats people. There should be something distinct as God's people about us. And so what I want to do is I want to just look at these positive and negative commands, these imperatives, and I want us to kind of look at these and with an eye toward social media in particular. And so verse 3 in Romans 12 says, don't think you're better than you really are. Don't think you're better than you really are. You ever wanted to place that on somebody's Facebook? Have you ever wanted to do that? Hey, verse of the day, you're not such a big shot. Don't think so highly of yourself. And it kind of goes to this thing of narcissism, where we're just overly enamored with ourselves. Narcissism has been a thing since Adam and Eve. But as we've been sharing and research keeps bearing it out, that social media just exacerbates this narcissism that we have. It kind of makes it a new normal. So much so that we kind of are oblivious to it. We don't even see it. We don't even recognize it around us. Dr. Keith Campbell says, here are some of the primary motives that we don't always recognize when it comes to social media, that there is a desire to look important, to look special, a desire to gain attention, status, and self-esteem. And I look at that and you say, well, that seems a little bit harsh. And it's not always true, but let's face it, much of the time it is. And we've been talking about just that for the last couple weeks. We want to gain some attention. We want to gain some status. We want people to think of us a certain way. So we build these identities and we project this image that may or may not be 100% true. But Paul wants to kind of address this head on. So he says, don't do that. Don't think you're better than you really are. And don't try to convince everybody else that you're better than you really are. We become experts, again, at appearing better than we are. We're so discipled to do exactly what Paul tells us not to do. And we're We're raising a generation that experts are saying, here's who I want you to think that I am. And there's a great danger in this. Paul says, don't do that. We've got all of these platforms, and if we're not careful, they can, again, cause us to do exactly what Paul says, don't do. Now, why do we even care about this? Well, because Paul understands that we can't have community. We can't have real community unless we are real with one another. We can't be a bunch of people pretending and then try to have real community. Like, what will make this church a family is when we have a culture where we can be humble and transparent and vulnerable. And what will destroy us as a church, what will destroy us is if we think that we've got to come here and pretend that we've got the perfect relationships, the perfect marriage, the perfect children, and we have this sort of pretense about us. We've got to be able to be real. But we've been conditioned with this idea that I've got to put the best version of myself. I want to make people think that I'm better than I really am. And Paul just very simply says, like, don't do that. Don't do that. And I don't want to be a church that does that. I don't want to be a church where when we come in here, we just kind of play this game again, where we try to convince everybody that we're better off than we really are. Like, I don't want to do that. That's why the part of our little logo that we have, be. Like, we want to be able to be who we are. I'm not saying that we just excuse sin or whatever, but we're not afraid to be transparent and vulnerable, because that is the only way that community happens. And Paul knew, for those people living in Rome, that church, in the very twilight of the very dawn of the church, they had an incredible opportunity to be a witness if they would live out this kind of authentic commitment to God and commitment to one another, that people would see that. And they'd be like, I don't know what's going on with that group of people. They're kind of weird sometimes, but I've seen enough to know I want to find out more about it. I want to know about this God that they serve. And so in verse 3, he says, now be honest. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the grace God has given us. It says, if you want to measure yourself, here's how you measure yourself. You measure yourself not compared to each other, but you measure yourself by how much grace you've received from God. And the more broken you understand yourself to be, the more you're real with the things in your life that just aren't the way they should be, the more you're going to recognize how much grace you have received. And that changes things. Like, I'm not going to measure myself by my accomplishments or how many posts I have or how many likes I get, but I'm going to measure myself by God's standard and how much grace God has given to me. We don't look to social media to do that. Jesus, for once and for all, determined how absolutely valuable we are when he died for us. We measure ourselves, our worth, by that measure. So verse 16 is another negative imperative that I want to talk about, because it's very similar. Paul says, don't think you know it all. Don't think you know it all. Now, don't act like you're better than you really are, and don't act like a know-it-all. Because we all love know-it-alls, don't we? Don't we? We love people that know everything. Let me tell you, if we as a church, if we as a community, if we as a people, if we as a civilization could figure this out, things would change significantly. And certainly the way people view the church would change significantly. Not saying that it's always fair, but the perception people have of you and I, of Christians, of evangelical Christians, people who believe the Bible, is that we think that we know everything. Well, we know a couple things for sure. We also believe some other things that we can agree to disagree on some stuff. But I'll tell you, there's a whole lot of stuff that I don't know. And Paul says, don't be the kind of people where you appear that you can't learn anything from anybody else. So in verse 14, then, he gives a positive imperative, but he follows it with a negative. He says, bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. I'm not going to respond to somebody who is harsh and critical and unreasonable by being easily offended, by being harsh and critical. I'm not going to curse those who curse me. Somebody's going to curse me. Somebody's going to curse the church. What is our response? Paul says you bless them. You pray for them. You pray for God's blessing over them. Paul says this is what should make us different than everybody else in the world, and how we react and how we respond when people mistreat us. Too often, the church's response is that we want to go on the offensive. We want to argue. We want to fight back. We want to retaliate. And we forget that this world we live in is not a battlefield, but it's a mission field. And we're not going to browbeat people on a mission field. So we need to be careful how we respond, that we always do it in love and respect, and we don't curse people, we bless them. I like verse 9. He says, now don't just pretend. Don't pretend to love others. Don't pretend to love one another. And so I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much, and I think I'm doing so to make a point. When social media can make it so easy to pretend that we love other people. I mean, you can make a comment or you like a post and you feel like you're kind of part of a community. But what have you really done? Social media can promise community without any commitment to one another, but you can't have community without commitment. Community is not convenient. Community requires something of you. Community oftentimes requires that you give of yourself, not just that you hit a button. So Paul says, hey, don't just pretend to love each other. Don't settle for that kind of relationship, and we don't want to do it certainly within the context of our church family. But people are not understanding this. There's an article, New York Times, written by a guy named Hal. And Hal has 700 or more than 700 online friends, Facebook, I presume. 700 whatever social media friends. And in his words, he said, I was absurdly proud of all my online friends. So he decided that what he was going to do was he wanted to have real community, not just virtual community. But what he decided to do was that he had a 2-year-old at home and he didn't really get to see these 700 people very often. So he was going to throw a big party and invite them all. He was going to invite all of his social media friends to this party. And so he had a Facebook party. He said it was going to be at this bar down the street from the street where he lived, and he invited all of his friends. And you could respond, as you know, in one of 3 ways: either attending, maybe attending, or not attending. And 15 people, he said I'm going to be there. 15 people said I'm going to attend. 60 people said, well, I might be attending. Hal was hoping just for 20. He thought that would be pretty awesome if he got 20 of his friends to just come and show up. They could spend some time together, get reacquainted, or get acquainted with the ones he had no idea who they were. But here's what he writes. It says, on the evening in question, I took a shower, I shaved, I put on new pants. Evidently, that was the big thing for him. I put on new pants and my favorite shirt. He said, I was brimming with optimism. I headed over to the neighborhood watering hole, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. He said, eventually, one person showed up. And the one woman who showed up to meet Hal, he didn't know who she was. She was a friend of a friend. He said, we made small talk for a few minutes, and then she left. Hal said, I waited until midnight, but nobody else showed up. So he ordered a beer, sat by himself, and he concludes his article with these words, 700 friends, but I'm drinking alone. Now, you read something like that, and you want to go, like, Hal, you're going to the wrong place. Like you're trying to build community in just the wrong place with the wrong people. But you know as well as I do that is kind of how many people are operating these days. And we've been saying all throughout this series that oftentimes social media in particular is a place where people go when they're hurting, when they need some affirmation, when they need some encouragement, when they're lonely, when they're looking for real community and they don't know where to find it. And maybe, just maybe, a timely invitation, maybe from you to have real community, maybe attend church or a special event, that can make all the difference in their lives. There's so much research that shows the direct correlation between how much we use social media and how lonely we feel, how isolated we feel. And as our world continually moves and moves and moves in that direction, more loneliness, more isolation, the more we need each other, the more the world needs us to model what real community is like, where people actually love one another and care for one another. It's an incredible time for us as a church and all the churches to show what it looks like. Paul says in verse 4, there are many, many parts of one body, and that we all belong to one body. We all belong to each other. We all belong to each other. Verses 6 through 10, he gives some ways that we can kind of understand this fact that we belong to each other. He says, look, God has given each of you a gift, and that gift was given to you by God. And that gift is given to you not just for you. Like, you understand that gifts, spiritual gifts or whatever gifts are not given to us for ourselves to brag about and say, well, I did this or I've got this. The gifts are given for the church, for the others, for each other, to build one another up. And as we look down through these gifts, I just want you to think about what gift God might have given you that you might be able to use to redeem the screen. So Paul says, if God has given you the ability to prophesy and speak truth, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. And certainly with computer, social media, there is an incredible platform to be able to do that. But what I would say is please watch how you're doing it. Please watch the things that we put online and how we are trying to speak truth, because too many times it doesn't come across as loving. So we just need to be careful with that. But it's no doubt we have an incredible platform just to say, hey, God did this for me today, or God challenged me with this today, and I don't have everything figured out. I don't think I know everything, but I know that God had my back today. Maybe one of your friends reads that and they'll go, I trust this person. Like if they think that there's something to it. Like I'm desperate enough. Maybe I just might try God myself. Paul says, do that. Light a light in the darkness. But we don't do it like we're better than everybody else. We don't do it like we can't learn anything from anybody. We're not self-righteous. We're not sanctimonious. We're not caustic. We speak out, maybe, but with humility and boldness. Verse 7, he says, if your gift is serving, serve others well. And social media and other things certainly have increased our ability to serve. It's a lot easier, and there are other opportunities to do things that were very, very hard back in the day. We can organize meal trains. We can organize prayer groups. We can organize things, and we can do a better job taking care of one another. And I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, but whenever I do, I go to our church Facebook pages. Like I go to some of your pages. I'm not following you in terms of, oh man, this person said that. I need to, because like that would be creepy. But what I do is I look and see what people put. And I'll be honest with you. There have been things that I have posted on my Facebook that I left on there for an hour, and then God's like, nah, and so I'll go take it off. Just doesn't need to be on there. I don't need to say that. And so I just think we need to be very careful about this. But as we can serve others and we have the chance to do so, social media does increase our ability to organize ways to help people. And so that's a very good thing. Verse 7 says, hey, if you're a teacher, teach well. If you're a teacher, teach well. Now, I happen to think that in our town we have, I think, some of the finest teachers there are. Like I really do. The people that work in the schools, the teachers especially, I would be glad and was glad to have any of my kids sit in their classrooms. But here's the thing about it is that we're all teachers. We're all teachers. We may not teach for a living, but we're all teachers because no matter who you are, there is somebody's watching you. Somebody is watching you to see how you act, how you react. Somebody is watching you as a role model. Somebody is watching every one of us. And so we are all, in a sense, teachers. And so we need to make sure that what we're presenting is well. If your gift is to encourage each other, do that. I think this is one of the greatest ways that we can do that. We can encourage one another, not just by hitting a like or a heart or a weepy smiley face. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I never know. Anyway, but I have a friend on Facebook, and he is a friend of mine from high school, and I haven't kept in touch with him a lot, but we were good friends. And he, a few years ago, went through a divorce. He had a bad alcoholism problem, and he went through a thing, and he's been sober, and yet he is so incredibly lonely. And it was his birthday, I don't know, a couple months ago, and he put something on his Facebook page about it's my birthday, and pray for me because I'm lonely and I'm struggling. I don't want to relapse. I've been sober for whatever years, and it was really encouraging to see the number of people, not just that they said, "Hey, you can do it," or praying for you, but took the time to actually write some pretty lengthy, helpful replies. And that's just one way that we can really encourage each other and redeem these things that we spend so much time looking at. Verse 8 goes on to say, if it's giving, give generously. And so again, a church member loses her grandfather. Maybe she doesn't have enough money for the funeral or a plane ticket to the funeral or whatever it is. And it's easy and oftentimes to give people what they need to help them. And there's all kinds of opportunities usually to do that. It's been a great thing to help us be generous with one another. It says if God has given you leadership ability, take that responsibility seriously. If he's given you the ability to influence others or given you a platform to do that, then you need to take every opportunity to do that. If you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do that. I'm going to go quickly just through some of these other ones real quickly that apply. But in verse 9, he says, hate what is wrong. Hate what is wrong. That as a people, we ought to hate the things that God hates, and we ought to love the things that God loves. And so it says, hate what is wrong. And man, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you do a study through scriptures, Old Testament and New Testament, you will find that one of the things that God just hates more than anything is injustice in the world. Injustice in the world, people being cruel and mean to one another. Sometimes individually, sometimes it's a systemic thing, but God hates injustice. So we as God's people, we need to be quick to hate what is wrong, hate injustice. So we need to be very quick to defend when people are dehumanizing people or belittling somebody or cyberbullying or whatever it might be. That we need to be able to speak up for people because those are forms of injustice, and God hates that. He hates it. Verse 11 says, never be lazy, never be lacking in zeal. Like, don't be lazy. Don't be spending hours upon hours on games and whatever. Just that's not having zeal. Don't be lazy. Sometimes we need to decompress, I get that. Sometimes after a hard day, we just need to veg out and play some whatever it is you play, I get that. But we need to watch it. We need to be careful that we're not falling into this just sort of our default thing is to plop down, do some deep couch sitting and binge on Netflix or infinitely scroll through Facebook or whatever. We be careful with that. Verse 13, always be eager to practice hospitality. This is something that we don't do very much in our society anymore. That's one of the things that drew me to that story I shared with you earlier about let's get together and let's have a meal. And I will be willing, I venture to guess that probably not many of you think you have that spiritual gift of hospitality. Like I don't think I do. It was a really, really important. It was a safety issue back in the first century. Today, it's an issue of do we want to be in community with one another? I really have ever only known, I think, really one person who had, without a doubt, the gift of hospitality, and that was my mother-in-law. Like, that was her gift. And you ask anybody that knew her, like, that was her gift. And I knew that because I was one of the recipients of that. And I found out later she had an ulterior motive in inviting me over. But, hey, whatever works, right? But practice hospitality. Again, it's the thing of social media is fine, but let's not kid ourselves into thinking that we're building real relationships with all these people. Verse 17, do things in such a way that everybody can see you're honorable. Do things in such a way that everybody can see that you're honorable. That covers a lot of stuff, but I think, again, especially online social media, man, be careful about the things that you like or the things that you put on your pages. It sometimes is really discouraging to see things on people's pages that I know are Christians, like not any of you, but all my other Christian friends, right? And you're just like, man, what were you thinking with that? That's just not, that's not right. Like, don't do that. And again, I'm not the not the Facebook police or anything, but as a pastor, I'm really concerned and really discouraged by some of the things that I see on the pages of Christ followers. And so I think a good guideline is how Paul put it in Philippians. He says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, post those things on your Facebook page. Like that's what Paul says. Post those on your Facebook page. It's kind of my translation, but so I got to ask a question at this point. Are you guys okay? Are you good? Are you awake? Like, did you get enough sleep last night? No? Well, listen, hey, I give you credit for being here. I really do. It's at this point that I'm going to ask you to kind of gird yourself up a little bit and try to wake up a little bit if you've been fading out, because I'm going to tell you in just a few minutes yet another story that makes Chris look like an idiot. And I know that you all want to be awake for that one. Verse 21, he says, don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. Again, all of these things we should know. But we want to use these things for good. So I told you when we first started this that it's been a little bit of a challenge for me to even talk about this stuff, because I love technology, and as a church we're pretty technologically advanced or whatever, and yet I want you to know that there's a reason and a purpose for all that, and we're trying to use our live stream, our website, YouTube, whatever it is that we do, we want to use that for good, to promote the cause of Christ, to let other people see what does this church look like inside? How are these people really? What do they do? Let's look at one of their worship services, and so we tried to redeem our screens and our various technology in that way. And I'm going to tell you right now, like, it's been kind of eye-opening for me. There are places that you can go on our live stream, our YouTube channel, and our Facebook, and you can see where, like, all the places around the globe that your website or whatever it is have gotten hits. And I want to tell you that we have hits all over the world. Like, there have been people in Africa watching our live stream, and I realize that not all of that is somebody sitting down glued to the. I understand that, but it's been pretty amazing for me to see the reach of what we're doing here. And even now, right now as I speak, there are people who are watching that for whatever reason can't be in here church with us. Maybe it's because they live far away, and many of them do, and we're glad that you're here with us. Maybe it's because some of them aren't as sharp as you and they forgot to set their clocks. And so I just want to say to you, like, we still love you, but we do miss you, so we hope we'll see you next week. But we want to use all of these things. We want to use all of these things for good. And I really want to encourage you. Man, I've said this so many times. And again, I don't know why. Like, I don't know why it is. I have found that if I want somebody to see something on my Facebook page and respond to it, because I get kind of needy too, right? I found that if I put a picture of myself and Lori on that page, like, everybody will comment. Like, everybody will have something to say about it. Like, good, great picture, whatever. If I put something on my Facebook page by myself, like 4 people maybe, like, and like, I'm not, here's the deal. I don't care about my own personal thing, but I do wonder, why isn't it that I don't see more sharing among your Facebook pages of stuff that's going on in church? Like, you share a link to the live stream or a sermon from YouTube, you share it on your page, and I'm telling you, there will be somebody among your friends that for whatever reason, that particular message on that day or whatever it might be, whatever you put on there, will strike a chord with somebody. I cannot urge you enough to share the stuff on your pages and various things that we do here at church, and like, invite people to the escape room. Okay, evidently it's not going to be like I thought it was. We can't lock our children in a room and escape, all right? Kathy has her whole different idea of what that's all about, but it's a great thing to invite your friends to, invite your neighbors to, and I don't know if I have to tell you this or not, but there are many, many people whose first introduction to our church is through their children, through a kids event. And invite people. Easter's coming up. What a great time to invite people. We're going to be starting the sermon series next week called Via Crucis, and that just means way of the cross. And we're going to be journeying with Jesus the last week of his life, all the way up to Easter. And then following that, I'm going to do a series that's just why can we believe in the resurrection? Why can we as Christians believe and put our hope and trust in the resurrection? And I know that you have somebody in your circle that needs to hear those messages. So what a great time to invite people. Every study that I've seen, every study, every survey has said the vast majority of people who don't go to church, if they were invited to a church by somebody they know and trust, they would visit that church. Invite people to church. Share our stuff. And let's put a good use to all of this stuff. Social media is at its best when it's a medium, when it's a way to connect people together, not in an artificial way, but to reach out and connect people, which will hopefully lead to eternal life and a real relationship. So invite people. Now here again, I kind of debated about whether or not to share this because it is embarrassing, but I'm going to do it anyway. So, and some of you have heard this story, but a few weeks ago, I was in my garage, and I was putting together a generator that I got that Saturday, that day, because we're going to get all that snow and that ice. And so because I bought that generator, we didn't get all that snow and ice. Like, you're welcome, all right? But I'm in my garage, and I'm putting this generator together. When it's putting together, that's a very generous word. Actually, I was trying to take it out of the box is what I was doing. And like, I really don't know how this happened. But I'm in my garage getting this thing out of the box, and I can't tell you how. But in the course of this very, very intricate operation of breaking down this box so I could get at this generator, I somehow... I lost my footing and I fell face forward on my garage floor. I didn't hit my face. I was that close from smacking my face on the floor, but it was a hard fall. I didn't just, it was a hard fall. I cannot believe to this day I didn't break my wrist. I was shaken up over it. Mostly because I'm thinking, how did you do that? You klutz. How did you do that? So as I'm laying on the ground pondering this question of how I did that, all of a sudden, this thing on my wrist here starts blaring and beeping and vibrating and making all kinds of noise. And I looked at it, and it said, Chris. It didn't say Chris, but it said, it looked like you've taken a hard fall. Are you okay? And I remembered at that point that the Apple Watch has this thing called fall detection for klutzes like me, that if you take a hard fall, if you're in an accident or something like that, it will make sure you're okay. And when you set it off, then you have a certain amount of time before it will call 911 and tell 911 where you're at. No, but then after it does that, it'll call your emergency number. My emergency number was sitting in the house. And I'm like, I'm not letting you call her just because I'm a klutz in the garage. And so I quickly shut the thing off. Yeah, I'm okay, whatever. And but it does that. First time I've ever set that off. Now I knew it had that possibility, so I wanted to test it when I first got it. I'm out in the parking lot, I'm just falling down. I'm just walking around, just falling down as hard as I could. Tried to set the thing off, see if it worked. People probably thought I was, having a stroke or something out there, but not to belittle that. But I couldn't set it off. It's smart, it knows. Now, depending on who you are in your frame of mind, you may not like that a device knows where you are and does that calls somebody. That might be creepy to you, and I get that. I totally do. But I actually think it's a good thing. I would have liked to have gotten a call right away when Lori was in an accident last summer, which it surely would have let me know. It seems like every week I read of another story where somebody who has either been in a wreck or fallen has been saved because of this thing they have on their wrist. That this thing has put them in contact with somebody who could help them. That when they were fallen down and when they were in dire distress, that they were put in touch with help. Now, here's the thing about it is, I know 5 or 6 people myself who might be they might be actually alive today. Had they had something like this when they were in a time of crisis to put them in touch with somebody who could help them. In fact, a couple of them died because they slipped and fell unconscious next to a running generator a few years ago. And then there are too many others that in times of crisis, they don't have anybody to reach out to. They don't have anything to connect them with somebody. And so they just decide to end it. Now listen, there are a lot of great uses of the amazing technology that we have. I don't want to go back to rotary phones on the wall. What does zero sound like? That was awesome. I don't want to talk to my kids who are living far away and have to worry about long distance charges. I like the fact that my kids and my daughter at college can pick up a phone and can call me or text me or whoever any time of day. Like I like technology and what it has helped us to do. When she was in Europe, like I love being able to look at her pictures and like it's an amazing thing. And it does so much good and it keeps us connected in great ways if we use it in the right ways. And there are many places in the world, like I kid you not, and some of you know this, there are many places in the world where people do not have running water, they don't have indoor plumbing, but they have cell phones. And you say, well, how can they afford cell phones if they can't afford? Well, they afford cell phones because they find some way to do it, because that is a lifeline that they never would have had. There's no way they could have afforded to put wire lines all over these islands and these places, but they have a cell phone. A lot of them, because they have their cell phone, are able to get what they call microloans, and they're able to borrow small amounts of money to start a little business to support themselves. A lot of times people, they used to haul movie projectors and big reels of movies up mountainsides to show people the Jesus movie, to which hundreds of thousands of people have come to Christ as Savior because of that. But now they take a chip and they give it to somebody, and that person puts it in their cell phone, and they see the story, they see the movie of Jesus. This is an amazing thing. So much good can come from this stuff that we've been talking about. But listen, the greatest good comes when it's a way to reach out to people and connect with them at a moment of need in their lives. When our screens and our technology become a conduit, a way to call out for help, it's a good thing. When our screens connect us to people we're not physically with, instead of distracting us from people sitting next to us, it's a good thing. When our technology and our screens help us connect others with Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who will walk with them and pick them up when they fall, that is how we truly redeem the screen. And so as God's people, let us be on guard against the ways that they are just not good things, but let us always be looking and thankful for ways that our technology, whatever it might be, can connect us with other people, can connect others who need help, connect them with others, and that as a community, we can show what we are as a church by how we care for one another. It's like that old song used to say, they'll know we are Christians by our love. Let us show that in the way that we interact on social media, in the way that we use our technology. And let us please, as I don't know how many of you took that challenge that I gave the first week, but I hope that you've seen how we just spend too much time on our phone. We just do, every one of us. And let's be careful about that. And let's look at the person across from us or next to us. And let's just redeem these screens for God's glory.